Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Here to spread a little holiday cheer on the final 2024 episode of the Gauer Hour. Maybe doing some last-minute shopping, some stocking stuffers, some gifts, maybe getting Christmas dinner planned out. Maybe you're wrapping, or maybe you're just sitting at home with the day off, or maybe you're working very hard for a full 8 hours from 9 to 5 before your holiday break. Regardless, thank you for tuning in. Rob Joyce, Megan Gauer. Megan, how'd them cookies turn out?
Pretty good. I'm still making some, but we're getting there. I've probably made like 8 dozen cookies so far.
Waiting. Where are we at? Loaded show. Not the busiest week ever to recap. We'll get to the highlights, but a surprising amount this weekend. Tonight, surprisingly tasty slate. Tomorrow we have, of course, UConn-USC as the main course, but some other games as well that are intriguing. We're going to hit on all of them. Plus, we have a guest joined in 10, 15, 20 minutes or so by Cassandra Negley of Yahoo Sports, their women's basketball writer. Megan, where do you want to start? Because we have a lot to talk about this weekend. Not a whole lot happened since we last spoke last Friday. A lot on Sunday, a couple of midweek, and otherwise, hope you enjoyed Christmas shopping.
Yeah. Let's start with the midweek slate. I think Tuesday was maybe the best week of day of the week.
Yeah, I thought Oklahoma, Michigan. I thought that was an entertaining game. It started super late, but Sooners went on an early run. Wolverines matched it. Sooners went on a run. Wolverines kind of matched it. Eventually, Oklahoma pulled away. I was just entertained, which really, in mid-December, that's all I'm going to ask for.
Yeah, it was like a back-and-forth game between two, pretty evenly matched teams, I would say. Oklahoma wins it by 10, but it never really felt like Michigan was totally out of it, so a fun game.
Yeah, Wolverines, I feel like they were chasing from the start, and I don't think the Sooners ever lost control of the game, and then eventually they pulled away. Honestly, I was most impressed by Oklahoma winning a tough game in which the offense wasn't really there. They shot sub 40%. Reagan Beers was in foul trouble the whole night. She played only 20 minutes, still managed to win on the glass. So I was impressed that Oklahoma won in a way that we don't typically associate Oklahoma winning against a good team.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's agreed most impressive from this game, because we know Oklahoma can win when their threes are falling and they're shooting the lights out and put up 80, 90 points, but for them to kind of have to grind this out a little bit more and just not have things go entirely their way and still get a win, and not just like a narrow win, like you said, but like a pretty convincing win to some degree. Like, I think that was impressive from this team.
Yeah, I like that they have seniors who embrace their roles off the bench. Lexi Keys, 18 important minutes. She had 11 points on a night when Skylar Van, Peyton Verhulst were struggling shooting. Liz Scott had 8 rebounds off the bench with Beers in foul trouble, and that's what you want. Oklahoma, I think, might be. I mean, they're not like South Carolina, UCLA deep, but I think that depth in March could be important, especially if their big three, really all three of them had off nights.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that's important we're seeing it, I think, kind of start to come out where like the teams that have depth just have more ways to win. And as we start to get to conference play and things like that, it just becomes more important.
Michigan, they're just so young. Yeah. Like Mila Holloway is good. Obviously, Silas Orge, Olivia Olsen are good too. They're just young, and they don't quite have the size right now. Like, they turned it over a bunch. I feel like they could be like a Michigan State last year where they're in all of these games. They might just fall short in a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly. I think this team is like kind of like they're probably going to be really good next year. But this year, like you said, they're just so young. It's going to take some time for it all to come together. So, like, they'll be in the games. They're going to look decent. They make the tournament, but they're probably just, not fully there this year. And then next year, we'll be talking about them more, I'm sure.
I feel like maybe outsized expectations because of how they played against South Carolina in game one. It's like, all right, maybe they aren't quite at that level yet, but they're not that far behind. And yeah, like you said, next year they certainly will be. The other game Tuesday, both games at the Hall of Fame, whatever it was called, at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. LSU routed Seton Hall, and then boy, UConn, Iowa State.
I don't even know what to make of that game. It was insane.
I was very hard on the Huskies last week. Very hard. I'm not going to complain about Tuesday. I mean, 10 of 11 from 3 in the first quarter. Ashlyn Shade holy moly. Yeah, I mean, it is no. You talk. I don't know what I want to say about this game.
Yeah, I think in some ways it brings you a little bit more comfort about this UConn team, and that, like, okay, maybe the 3-point shooting that we saw at Notre Dame, which was problematic for them in that specific game, like, was a fluke when they come out and shoot like this. That said, I feel like this UConn team in general, it's just been very up and down this season. And, like, I mean, Gino said it, like, there's moments where they look like they could be the best team in the country, and then there's, like, moments where it's like, can they beat Holy Cross? So it's, I don't know, like, it's hard to take too much away from it. And, like, I mean, they set a program record in threes. Ashton Shade is never probably going to score the first 14 points of the game again. They're probably not going to go 9 from 10 from 3 in the first quarter again. But I think there was, like, flashes of signs of positive, at least from this game. And just that, like, if they can take some pieces of this, like shooting the ball a little bit better from 3, granted, like, they weren't defended at all on the 3-point line for a lot of those shots. If someone like Shade can step up, and she's not going to score 27 points a game, but can she score 10, 15 points a game, like, consistently? But I think I feel like we're still just talking potential. It's like you see it and it happens, but then we'll see what they do on Saturday.
Right. Like I said last week, with UConn, it's beat an unranked team by 30 and hit 23s. Can you do it against a top 10 team like USC? We'll find out. Yeah, like with you, Shade, I'm not expecting her to score 27 against USC, but she can't be scoreless like she was against Notre Dame. And it feels like, if she makes the first shot or two, it's going to be a big day from her. If she misses the first shot or two, she's not a great rebounder. She's not a great distributor of the ball. If she doesn't score, I'm not sure what else she brings. So it's important that she does score, especially early in a game.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, what most impressed me, not the 23s, when Iowa State had that 11-0 run in the second quarter, they cut it down to 14. It's like maybe a repeat of Ole Miss. Does Iowa State come out in the second half and make this a game? Instead, they weathered the storm. It was back to 19 at halftime. 3 minutes into the third quarter, a couple Sarah Strong buckets. Like, all right, good night. That's what most impressed me, is that they, when it looked like Iowa State could make it a game, Huskies just calm, cool, kept them at arm's length, and blowout.
Yeah, and I think that's important, because I think what we saw at Notre Dame, that was maybe, like, I mean, you're going to have off shooting nights, like that type of stuff I was less worried about, but it was like, it never really felt like they were going to come back. Like, it just didn't feel like, I don't know, like they had the, like, I think someone described it as like killer instinct to, like, come back and, like, make the plays to get the win. And so even though this case they're not down, at least to see them, like, kind of have that kick in when Iowa State started to make the run, I think was a positive sign.
Iowa State. This is the last time I'm going to talk about the Iowa State Cyclones, probably for a month.
Yeah.
It's hard to make 23s in a basketball game. It's a lot easier to make them when they're wide open.
Yeah.
Lifeless.
You cannot leave Paige Beckers wide open on the 3-point line. Like, I don't know, maybe, like, I wouldn't give him Tash and Shade either, but, like, I could see where you're like, okay, that's not the person that we're going to focus on, but leaving Paige Beckers wide open on the 3-point line is just a wild choice.
I mean, open threes, no resistance. Like, sure, I understand coming out in his zone. It didn't work. No physicality. Very little offensively outside of Audie Crooks. They had a nice night from, who was it off the bench? Hit a bunch of threes. But
Yeah.
They head to West Virginia in a month.
Yeah.
They're not very good. It's disappointing given what we thought in the preseason. I don't think they're worth talking about for another month. So certainly the most disappointing team through the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Nationally.
Yeah, I would say so. I feel like at first I was like, okay, they were just, like, sailing a little close to the sun. Like, they're not a top 10 team, but, like, this is not a top 25 team right now. Like, the defense is just, it needs a lot of work.
Right. Like, it's not even losing to South Carolina and UConn, even by a lot. Right. These aren't 20-point losses. Even.
Right.
It's over 10 minutes into the game. I didn't watch the Thanksgiving game because I missed the first 7 minutes, and you turn it in. It's like, oh, it's 26-3. Okay. On to Turkey. So yeah, that's Iowa State. Sunday was entertaining. We don't have to go too far in depth because it was almost a week ago. Michigan State, Iowa, really fun game. Georgia Tech surprised me against North Carolina. Not that they won, but how they won. Yeah, two surprise unbeatens we talked about last week. Stay unbeaten.
Yeah, I feel like the Michigan State Iowa game was probably more what we expected. Like, you knew that one was probably going to be close. Michigan State gets the win, but it was close all the way through. But the way Georgia Tech beat UNC was really surprising to me, especially because we've talked so much about outside of like that UConn game how good UNC's defense has been, and then that did not happen against Georgia Tech. I forget exactly what it was, but I'm pretty sure they're like going into that game, they were allowing like 49 points a game, and
Yep.
Georgia Tech had 50 at halftime, or darn near close to it.
Yeah, no, 50, you're right. Yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, I'm with you. Surprising, not because they won, but of how they won. I know the final margin was 5 or 6. They were down 21. North Carolina was through 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Bench options of the Yellow Jackets really impressive again. Danny Carnegie, ACC Sixth Woman of the Year, might have locked that up already in mid-December. She's really good. And then Michigan State, I'm sold as them being for real. They didn't shoot well in any capacity. They were -9 in rebounding. Boy, they're a pain in the butt. They're relentless.
Yeah, they're going to be fun in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Sure.
We'll hit pause on this conversation because our guest has entered the chat. Yahoo Sports, Cass Negley, should join us next. Now joined from Yahoo Sports, Cass Negley. Follow her on Twitter at CassCAS. Negley, Cass, we'll start with the hard-hitting question. How is holiday planning going? Presents wrapped, bought, purchased?
We've got a few more. The upstairs is a elf mess, so we're just going to put that out of our minds. We're just forgetting about it.
You got Monday and Tuesday to figure out. It's fine.
Exactly.
It's fine. This week, you went through an exercise in your latest piece. Basically, did a blind resume comparison of the consensus top 4: South Carolina, UCLA, Notre Dame, UConn. I'm not a big rankings matter in mid-December guy, but I know, obviously UCLA has the win over South Carolina. Notre Dame handled UConn. How are you separating these 4 teams right now?
I felt going into it, the reason I really wanted to look at it was because everyone was voting UCLA number 1. And for me, if I'm doing a ranking, I really base it on what have you shown me and are you testing yourself? So I went into it thinking, I feel like UCLA hasn't played a lot of great teams. Certainly they knock off South Carolina, look incredible, but they haven't really played anyone else. So they were out of it. I put Notre Dame at number 1 just because they've tested themselves. I think they definitely faltered, but you beat USC, you beat UConn. Those are 2 incredible teams, incredible players. That just meant more to me. That's how I do my rankings.
Makes a lot of sense. You also made an interesting point in your piece this week. With these expanded conferences, kind of barring your rivalry games, you basically only play a team once this season. For example, Georgia Tech beating UNC. The Jackets went up to Chapel Hill, won, but now UNC doesn't get a chance to return that favor unless they meet in the ACC tournament. When it comes to seeding and the eye test, et cetera, is there more of an emphasis, you think, this year on a per-game basis where they're not being kind of home and homes with these teams?
I think there might be, right? I think it's just tough because you only get one shot in each game of seeing how good the team is. And I think it's just different and new. And I think whenever anything is different and new, it's going to mess with something like the rankings or the seedings a little bit. I just thought it was interesting to look at. It's also sad from a fan perspective. I know we get to see, for example, Duke and North Carolina twice, but we don't get to see Duke play anyone else. What if there ends up being an incredible game? We don't get to see that rematch.
Sure. Yeah, and even, if you have a freak off night one way or a freak amazing night like that holds, so it could be a good thing. You have one bad night, you don't have a chance to, make up for it. A handful of teams, Georgia Tech, one of them, that have pleasantly surprised us this year. Georgia Tech, Michigan State's undefeated, Tennessee undefeated. Any of that trio has impressed you the most through 6 weeks? Teams that, didn't get a whole lot of preseason hype.
Yeah, I'm going to take the easy road out and say Tennessee. I had read that ESPN piece before the season, and I think whenever there's a new system, they want to play fast, they want to press. I love pressing. I think it's not done enough. The coach, Kim Caldwell, had talked about it, and just everyone hates it. Well, then do it. Train your teams to do it. I think they've looked really good. I think if they can continue shooting really well, then they can surprise teams. And sometimes when you get to the tournament, as you guys know, like you just have to surprise teams and do something different and change it up. And I think Tennessee is that team.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're the type of team, if you haven't played them already this season, you probably haven't seen anything like it.
Yeah.
In the preseason, you wrote about how South Carolina, UConn, USC, Notre Dame, and Texas were the 5 teams that were probably the most likely to win it all, and then UCLA, Duke, and Iowa State as kind of the long shots with the next group. I assume that UCLA probably might have moved in that grouping now, and Iowa State maybe not a part of it anymore. But any other adjustments you're thinking in terms of who you think can win it all?
Sometimes you got to just like throw it out there.
Yeah.
I said it the preseason too. It's fine.
Yeah.
We were wrong.
Yes, UCLA is up there for right now. I like that they're playing through Lauren Betts a little more. It seems like that was really what caused their doom last year. I think I'm going to stick with those for now. As you guys know, like non-conference is just so tough and so weird. You don't get to see a lot of super high caliber games from a lot of these teams. And I think if you're, building a new group and like new chemistry, playing these non-conference teams that aren't as good is great. And LSU, proved us wrong a few years ago and had like the worst non-conference schedule and won a championship. So what do I know? But I'll stick with them for now and do the UCLA swap.
Yeah. What do you make of a team like, LSU, we haven't really seen play anyone. Ohio State, we haven't really seen play anyone. Maryland, a nice win over Duke. Otherwise, in the last month, like I haven't cared who Maryland's playing because they won yesterday by 1 billion points. Do you even bother trying to rate these teams until, a month from now when we get into the bulk of conference play?
What do you mean rank them?
Or pass a firm judgment on them. Like, is Duke a national championship contender? Is LSU a national championship contender? Like, the record says so, the talent says so. Haven't really seen it against, a team in that echelon.
I think it's a great question. I think like that's the problem. You're always looking to like make claims and like have conversation, but do we really know about some of these teams? No. As for those teams you just mentioned, like one thing I really like about Maryland and why I have them ranked so high is because when they were here in Syracuse and I talked to Brenda Fries about it, she talked about how she brought in all these transfers, but they're incredibly experienced transfers. They're 4th and 5th year players. They know what the big moment means. They've been in them. It's just coming together. And I think that kind of thing matters. If you look at a team like Duke, like, are they going to be great in the ACC where it's packed with teams? I don't think like we really know yet. And it is incredibly difficult. And I think like early season AP rankings are so hard because especially when you get down to like 2021, like how do you differentiate a team where they've played completely different teams and none of them are very good?
Right. I will say we're firmly 3-bid A10 on this podcast, and you had to write up on Richmond. So I know Megan's a big fan of the Spiders.
Yes, yeah. We'll see how they do this weekend, but I'm excited for them.
If you had to choose right now, who would be your favorite from that group? If you have 4 months to change your mind, of course, but who do you think is likeliest right now to win it all?
UConn. I think if AZ is healthy, she provides that kind of like third scorer or second scorer, Paige, AZ. Sarah's only going to get better. I mean, the thing that I can't get away from with UConn is like every year Paige has been healthy. She's brought them to the Final Four. And to be honest, I really don't know how. So I think I just give it to them and like the Will and Gino's experience. And this could be Paige's last year. She said it probably is. Sometimes you just go with the story.
Okay.
Who are you guys is?
Last week I kind of went off on UConn.
Yeah,
a bit of emotional state. So South Carolina, I still think.
Okay.
I think the best thing that could happen to them was losing to UCLA in the fashion they did.
Agreed.
I think just maybe a reset of hey, we're undefeated national champs. We can play in third gear and win most games. Like, okay, maybe we can.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I might be leaning Notre Dame right now, especially once they get like Westbeld back and they get Carlin in the front court. Like they're so good already, and they don't even have everyone yet.
These are all very good ones. I want to change my answer now.
Go ahead, change it. You picked UConn. You will see UConn tomorrow. You're going to make the drive to Hartford. What are your thoughts on the Huskies against USC and, certainly the game of the weekend and maybe the two biggest stars in women's college basketball, Paige and Juju?
Yeah, I hope it's a good game. It should be. I hope Paige balls out. I hope Juju balls out. Kind of like what we had just talked about that Notre Dame and South Carolina both have that I think USC and UConn don't always have is those scorers and that help around Paige and Juju. So I want to see some breakout games from some other players who aren't, Paige, Juju, Kiki, and Sarah Strong.
Awesome.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's the key, honestly.
Plug your stuff. What do you got coming down the pike here?
Plug my stuff?
Yeah, not to put you on the spot, or if you don't want to.
I mean, I don't have a ton I can share at the moment. You can go to Yahoo Sports. We have a women's sports hub for all of your women's stuff. We have volleyball content and basketball. I'm just kind of going to chill while basketball is off next week for the holidays and regroup for the new year. I've spent so much of this year following Caitlin Clark around the country, which was tons of fun, but also a little bit exhausting. So we'll do a hard reset.
Awesome. Well, congrats on your well-deserved break. Follow her on Twitter at Cass Negley. Cassandra, thanks for joining us. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas, you guys.
Our thanks to Cassandra Negley of Yahoo Sports for joining us. She'll be in the building tomorrow. We'll get to UConn-USC in a little bit. Just any other thoughts from the week? I know we got cut a little short on Michigan State, Iowa, Georgia Tech, North Carolina. I will say I'm sold on the Spartans. I think they have the two playmakers, Julia Ayrault and Grace Van Sluten, are the stars. They have someone like Nyla Hampton who has the capability of taking over that game. She's played 130 college games. She looked like it on Sunday. And frankly, I still think Iowa is like top 15 caliber. Mm-hmm. It's just the second time in 2 weeks we're saying they couldn't take care of the ball. And that's a problem. That's a pretty big outlier now.
Yeah, I think you have to figure that out. It's really hard to be a top 15 team if you can't take care of the basketball against another team of similar caliber. So I do think that they've got to figure that piece out. But if they do, I think they're going to be in really good shape.
Yeah, I understand that. Michigan State's kind of an outlier in Tennessee. In fact, they're two pretty big outliers in terms of pressure. They're going to see it again. Ohio State pressures the heck out of you. USC, Michigan force a bunch of turnovers. If you play like at Texas or an Ole Miss in the tournament, you're going to see teams that you got to protect the ball. They are retiring Caitlin Clark's number on February 2nd versus USC. That's going to be spicy. Are you familiar with the fake drama involving Caitlin Clark this week?
Yeah, I did see something this morning. I wasn't aware that there was drama until this morning, but I saw it.
South Carolina's
South
retiring Asia Wilson's number on February 2nd. So they're taking it as a personal front that Caitlin Clark's number is being retired on February 2nd. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
I'm not surprised by this based on just the general state of the internet usually, but yeah.
I don't think Asia Wilson or Caitlin Clark care, so that's probably all that matters. Other midweek things, we brought up Asia Wilson, South Carolina. I was amused by the freaking out that they only led Charleston Southern by 8 at halftime.
Yeah.
And then LSU led by not many against UIC yesterday on the road. I assume that was a homecoming because that's weird that was a road game. You've watched UConn enough, being your alma mater. Like everyone expects you to win by 60 against every game. It's like it's probably the last game before the holiday break at like a noon.
Yeah, people just forget sometimes that these are like college kids and like they just want to we all just want to be done with work and don't want to want to phone it in this week. Like they all want to do the same thing. So yeah, I'm not overly worried about it. I mean, both of them pulled out bigger leads in the second half, but even if they won the game by 10, I wouldn't have thought twice about it.
No, UConn did that against Holy Cross 2 weeks ago. Guess what? Yeah. UConn is still good. South Carolina, sure, they sleptwalked to the point where Dawn Staley just drew a question mark on the whiteboard at halftime. It happens.
Yeah.
I don't think anything more or less of South Carolina or LSU because LSU maybe a little
Well,
more.
LSU a little
They
bit
seem
more
to
just 'cause
sleepwalk
of-
through a lot of halves.
Yeah, it's a habit, so that's more concerning because at some point they're going to run into someone where they can't recover from sleepwalking through a half. But South Carolina, I'm not worried about it at all.
Yeah, I am worried about Louisville.
Yeah.
Boy, that game 1 loss to UCLA where they look good, like even the overtime loss at Kentucky, that feels like 9 lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
Who's a bigger disappointment, Louisville or Iowa State?
No, I feel like it might be Iowa State just because, like, I don't really feel
I
like
guess
there was a ton
preseason
of
top 10.
Yeah, like there
Sure.
wasn't a ton of expectation around this Louisville team other than just like it's a Jeff Walls team, so we assume it's going to be decent. But yeah, losing by 30 to NC State. Oof.
It was good to see the Wolfpack finally just beat down someone
Yeah.
and do it for 4 quarters. Like they almost did against Ole Miss, then very nearly let it slip away. Nice to see NC State. I think they're regaining their footing after they just kind of got punched in the mouth to open the year and kind of staggered for a few weeks, and now I think they'll recover and probably not be as good as we thought in the preseason, but maybe not as bad as we thought they'd be 2-3 weeks ago. Megan, did you do your homework assignment that I gave you?
I did.
Okay. Christmas in 5 days, 4 days, whatever, whatever. The same day every year, but still however many days away it is. Santa's wish list, Megan. Give me a couple of teams. I have 2 that they're asking. It could be realistic. It could be unrealistic. If you want to give, South Carolina a 7-footer, sure. What's on Santa's wish list if you are enter team here?
Yeah, so I've got 3, but 2 of them are wishing for the same thing. So my first one is a rather obvious one, but I think UConn needs to wish for a healthy AZ Fudge because I do think that is so important for this team. I mean, I think we've seen that other people can step up, but like if they have Sarah Strong, Paige Beckers, and AZ Fudge, I do think like that's a team that you're talking about being a title favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no disagreements there. What's next?
And then I think both Texas, particularly Texas, but also USC needs to wish for finding some 3-point shooting because they're both struggling from the 3-point line. Texas is second to last in the country in the percentage of their points they're scoring from 3 at 12.5. USC not quite as far behind, but both of these teams I think need to find some 3-point shooting. I think in today's age it is really difficult to win a championship without being able to shoot the 3. And we're not talking about teams that have an Aaliyah Boston in the post that like South Carolina teams have been championship contenders without that. I think these teams need to find it if they're going to win a championship.
Yeah, Texas. I had the exact same thing as one of my 2. Longhorns have made 45 threes in 12 games. Madison Connor of TCU has made 48 by herself. Mariah Murray of Penn State had made 44 when I last checked yesterday. And Lauren Ross at Purdue Fort Wayne had made 42 going into yesterday. They're built to wear you down. But as we saw at Notre Dame, if they need points quickly, I'm not sure they can. Like as soon as they fell down 6, a minute into overtime, it's like they were chasing and they just didn't have the 3-point prowess. Like Layla Feely has been terrible from deep. She's 2 of 16 all year. And it's weird because she wasn't that bad at Michigan. Yeah. And she also shot a lot more threes at Michigan. So it's just weird. I'm not sure what to make of it, but this is a very Final Four problem for Texas.
Yeah.
Elite 8 problem. Like they can make do
right.
Unless they're playing South Carolina, the teams that we all know.
Yeah. Same thing for USC too. Like we're talking about how do you get through the Elite 8, through the Final Four, or win a championship type stuff. But yeah.
Right. And Juju had her big game against Cal Baptist.
Yeah, I think that's
like Tennessee can hit 33s. It's against North Carolina Central.
Mm-hmm.
UConn can hit 20 against the corpse of Iowa State's defense. Juju can hit 9 threes against Cal Baptist. We all know these things.
Mm-hmm.
You're judged by games like tomorrow.
Right.
I don't think Juju's going to hit 9 threes tomorrow. If she does, UConn's probably in trouble. Good for USC. What's third on your list?
Oh, that was my 3 because I combined 2. I cheated a little bit. 3 teams, but 2 wishes.
My other one, Florida State, a defense. They're second in the country in scoring. They're third in points per play. They've attempted the most shots. They've made the fourth most threes, the fifth most free throws. So they shoot the three and get to the line. They turn the ball over fewer than all but 2 teams in the country. All of these great things. They can't stop anyone. Some of it's the style, but like they played 4 games of note. They gave up 83 to Illinois. Gave up 74 to a bad Florida team. They scored 98. They gave up 79 in the loss to Tennessee, 85 to SMU. Like, just hold these teams under like 75, 70. They're going to win most nights.
Yeah.
That's my thought. We'll get to the superlative Christmas things later. But we can preview. Again, we'll get to UConn-USC. That is the big game. Don't sleep on tonight's games. There are a lot of good games tonight. A couple of multi-team events, because we need more of those, apparently. Fort Lauderdale and then San Francisco. We'll start in Fort Lauderdale. Tennessee, Richmond, Michigan State, Alabama. I don't understand how this MTE works. There's like 6 teams, and you just play 2 games.
Yeah.
However, big week for the Spiders. Big week.
Yeah, I think this is a really important weekend for Richmond and just the A10 as a whole, because of I think if Richmond does well here, it just accelerates the whole league. But you've got 2 really big opportunities with Tennessee and Alabama to make a statement. I mean, I think a win over Alabama is good. If you couldn't beat Tennessee, that would be huge. But just in general, I think even showing, I think you want to win one, but being competitive in both would be huge.
I'm embarrassed that we didn't talk about this last week. Richmond hosted Texas on Sunday, lost by 12 at home. It was a 10-point game in the fourth quarter. How do you view that? Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's a loss. If you're a bracketologist, you tell me when you're very much going to be on the bubble in the bubble conversation, because it's probably unfair, but that's probably what life will be like if they don't win the auto bid.
Mm-hmm.
What does a 12-point loss at home to Texas do? Like, I imagine it's probably a good thing for the eye test, maybe even the metrics.
Yeah,
I don't know what the spread was, but like you tell me, what does it mean?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for probably this metrics, but more importantly for the eye test, because I do think it shows that this team can be competitive with a team that's going to be considered among probably your top 2 seed lines, right? Like among the top teams in the country come March, you would expect. And I think part of what you're looking at when you're looking at bubble teams is like, yes, who has the best resume, but it's also like, who's going to come out and like compete in the tournament? Like who can like come and is going to compete with these teams, and like showing that you were able to like not get blown out by Texas, I think is it's not going to help you that much, right? Because it's still a loss, but it just like eye test wise, it helps you. And then if you couple that with like a win over, I mean, they have some nice wins already, but like a win over Alabama or a win over Tennessee, like those things together kind of paint a picture that like this is a team that deserves to be in the tournament.
Do they need to win one this weekend?
I think so.
Fair. Second real look at the Lady Vols today. Like, again, they hit 33s against winless North Carolina Central. That's hard to do regardless of the opponent. Congrats. I knew Tennessee was good at making threes. Memphis gave them quite the scare. The other day, Tigers handled the pressure. They didn't make 33s. It was a game for 40 minutes. What do you make of Tennessee here? I mean, I think at this point, everyone's established they're good. We'll just find out as the season goes on, once they start playing more and more of these quote unquote, upper echelon teams, how good.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing with their way they're playing right now is like, it depends on the 3-point shooting so much, and that's fine, but that's also very variable. And if you shoot the ball well, they're probably going to beat most teams when they shoot the ball well. If you shoot the ball poorly, you could have a hard time against a lot of teams that people won't expect you to have a hard time against. So I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of where they settle in at as they start getting into games that are more competitive consistently, and how that looks.
Yeah, and I will say, going back to Cass's piece, I never really thought, I think we spoke last week, SEC teams will eventually, this year, next year, however long, like learn to prep for Tennessee. If you only see them once a year, like it's hard to do.
Yeah.
They're just so different. The other notable team playing is Michigan State. They play, I don't know, I think they play Montana They played Montana yesterday and beat the living brains off of them. They play Alabama tomorrow. Third week ranked for the Spartans, kind of lost in the shuffle. The big comeback against Cal, who'll age extremely well. It was Thanksgiving week, so a lot happened. Sunday in front of a lot of eyeballs against Iowa, big fourth quarter. So let's see how they handle success now. I think like Alabama's an NCAA caliber team. A loss certainly isn't devastating, but I kind of want to see them keep this play up, and they can go to Maryland next week 12-0.
Yeah, and I think that will be, if they are 12-0 when they go to Maryland, that's going to be a big game, because I think we've talked about we haven't really seen Maryland play anyone since that Duke game. If Michigan State's going in there on an undefeated streak here still, I think that game's going to be really exciting. I mean, it'll be good regardless, but I just think that we'll add some hype to that Big Ten game.
What would you make of Alabama? Do they need to go 2-0 this week? Like 1-1, they play Richmond and Michigan State. Like they're 10-1 right now. They played 10 largely nobodies. Their notable game was at Cal, and they lost by 4. So what do you make of the Crimson Tide here?
I don't think they have to win it, but I think if you do win it, you take a lot of pressure off yourself in the SEC, because after this, and they've got Richmond obviously, but they're pretty much going into SEC play. And then I think if you kind of don't have any halfway decent wins, no offense to the other teams they've played, from the non-con, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to get those wins in SEC play. So like you've got to get some. Not saying you're going to beat like South Carolina in SEC play, but like, do you need to knock off a Oklahoma or something? Do you need, and you can't afford a loss to some of the bottom of the SEC teams. So I think they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves right now in conference play.
I feel like there's not a middle in the SEC. I feel like Alabama and Vanderbilt, like that's the middle.
Yeah.
South Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Tennessee is closer, I think, to the top than the middle. Maybe Ole Miss, but like you have really, really good teams that if you're Alabama, like you aren't going to be favored against any of those teams. There's some really, really bad teams. Missouri lost to Oral Roberts the other day. We've seen them lose to Vermont. Arkansas is really bad. Texas A&M. Like there's very few, like, so it feels like you have to win against the bottom 7 teams in the SEC, because I don't know if you're going to get any of the top 6 teams in the SEC.
Yeah, I think a win this weekend, and a Richmond win honestly would be a good win for them too. Either of those wins is not Tennessee. Michigan State obviously would carry more weight, but I don't think like a Richmond win is a bad win either. But I think it would be good for them to come out of this weekend with at least one of those wins to help boost their resume. And obviously the Michigan State one would carry a lot more weight, but I still don't think like a Richmond win is a bad one.
No, absolutely not. That's Fort Lauderdale. I couldn't tell you the name of the event. Can't tell you the name of the event in San Francisco, but they have 2 good games tonight. Stanford, Ohio State. Did you stay up? It's like an old school Pac-12 network game. Were you awake for Cal beating down Stanford last Friday?
I was not, no. I missed that one. I know, sad.
That was like your chance.
I know.
You get like 2 chances a year to relive the Pac-12 network days, and sad. Cardinal have come back down to earth. Second test for the Buckeyes, the other one being Illinois. I feel like Stanford's kind of a similar caliber, maybe a half step below Illinois. Yeah. Ohio State took care of the Illini fairly easily. I think a big fourth made the scoreline more flattering for Illinois than the game actually was. But still, I'm excited about this Ohio State team. It's just, you just need to see it against upper echelon competition, which obviously we're going to in Big Ten play, but a chance here tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be nice to see what they look like against Stanford, even though I don't know, Stanford, like at times they surprise me, and then like you say, then they come back down to earth with like the Cal loss. So it's kind of hard to figure out what to make of the Stanford team at the same time too. But like I said, we just haven't seen Ohio State really play many teams, so I still think this is a good opportunity to see what they look like.
Yeah, I mean Stanford's top 5 nationally in 3-point percentage, and with that just means if they get hot.
Oh, right.
And then if they're cold, well, they're not as good as everyone else, but if they get hot, they can compete with most teams. Buckeyes are a top 10 defense metric league, at least to this point. They'll get tested tonight. Game 2, UCLA Creighton. On paper, you would think the Bruins cruise. Well, most of us probably thought that in the round of 32 last year. If you remember, Bruins only won by 4. Blue Jays give them a heck of a game, and most of those Creighton pieces are back.
Yeah, I do think this Creighton team is just not quite as good as it's been the last few years they lost Emma Rosnick, and she was a big piece of that system. But they're just like a team that the way they play basketball is not a way that many teams play basketball. So they have that nature to surprise people just because people aren't used to the type of stuff they run. They're a little difficult to defend in the way that they run their offense. And losing Rosnick takes some of that away, but like they still have got shooters, that kind of core group of players that have been there since they had that big Iowa upset in the tournament a few years ago. It's still there. So this one could be interesting. I feel like UCLA should be favored, especially with Lauren Betts. Like Creighton doesn't have anyone that can guard Lauren Betts, but at the same time, we haven't, since that South Carolina game, we haven't really seen UCLA play anyone. So I think this is just like it's a interesting game in that like it's right before the holidays and you haven't played anyone in a while, and now you've got this big game 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah, I think UCLA will probably win somewhat comfortably. But I mean, if you're looking for keys for Creighton, like go back to last year, movement away from the ball in the half court. Mm-hmm. They're so good at just off-ball screens. It requires communication on defense. UCLA is good enough to take care of it. And then transition. Like second half of last year's round of 32 game, Creighton got out running a little bit in the first half. Second half, UCLA clamped down. Creighton scored 21 points in the half. So if you can turn over UCLA, which is doable, if you can control the pace, like they want to play faster than UCLA. So can they speed the Bruins up? And then obviously, like you just have to keep it manageable inside. Kind of like think Iowa, South Carolina from a couple of years ago in the Final Four. Like you're not going to win if you can keep afloat. Hope that UCLA misses, shoots sub 40% from inside the paint. You never know.
Yeah, I agree. I think UCLA probably should win comfortably, but Creighton has a knack for making it an interesting game if they're having a decent shooting night.
Yes. So that is the Friday slate with 4 different games. I think the start times are staggered. It helps East Coast, West Coast. So you can watch hoops like dinner time through like early Saturday morning. And then go to sleep and enjoy your Saturday and watch UConn-USC tomorrow at 8 o'clock in Hartford. Should be a sellout. Have you seen an update on Juju? She rolled her ankle when they were beating Elon by 1.5 billion points with 5 minutes left. I saw Lindsey Gottlieb get some crap for it. A lot of coaches do it.
Yeah.
Maybe not with 5 minutes left, but like starters play in the fourth quarter. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
No one twice.
I haven't seen an update. I feel like a rolled ankle, like she's probably playing. Like I don't feel like a rolled ankle is something you're sitting out like the biggest game, one of the biggest games of the year for. I don't know.
I haven't seen anything indicating that she's not fine. So I'll assume she's fine.
Exactly.
So give us the keys here to this game for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cass hit it on it really well. It's like, okay, Juju's going to get hers. Paige is going to get hers. And then I think they have the next layer here again, too. Like, Kiki's going to get hers, and Sarah's going to get hers. And then who else is going to step up? And I know we probably said something very similar when we talked about UConn Notre Dame, too. But, like, who has the third option that's going to step up? Is it UConn or is it USC? So I think that's the key. And I mean, it's not just the third option, right? It's like 3 through 6, 7, whatever amount of depth is getting meaningful minutes for each team, 8, whatever. But I think that's the difference. I expect that we're going to see big games from Paige Beckers and Juju Watkins on this type of stage. And like, yes, one of them can go off more than the other to like make a difference, but I really think it comes down to everyone else.
Yeah, like the Notre Dame game for UConn. I know Hidalgo like rightfully got all the headlines. Paige mostly matched her at least scoring production. Mm-hmm. I think Notre Dame won because of Liatu King, and like UConn didn't have anyone to match that.
Right.
So they need shade. I know nothing. I'm not breaking any news. I know nothing. I think AZ plays tomorrow. That's just a hunch.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. Don't know anything. But with the original timeline, they had kind of said a week. Yeah, don't play her against Iowa State because clearly you didn't need her to win that game. But like, this is a big game. If she can go, I think she goes.
Right, and they have what a week plus after it. So even if she's not, maybe she doesn't play 35 minutes, she can play 25 minutes. I have a hunch. Again, we're not breaking news.
Yeah, I don't know anything, but
whether it's AZ, whether it's Ashlyn Shade, I don't need Ashlyn Shade to score 27. I think UConn has to make like 8 to 9 threes. at a minimum.
Which is about what they average, I think. I think that's around where it typically is. They didn't make that at Notre Dame, but
they're going to get outscored in the paint. Like they just are with Iriafen and Rhea Marshall. And like I know Gino complimented Ice Brady. They're just the bigs don't score enough for UConn. So they're going to lose that battle. Like that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Can they also make Juju play a little bit selfishly? Like can Juju have one of those 9 for 25 games like in the Elite Eight last year?
Right.
Where like Juju and Mackenzie Forbes went for 53 last year. They did it on 47 shots.
Right.
Like UConn would take that. Like, yeah, sure. If Juju scores, it's the same thing we said about the Notre Dame game. If Juju scores 30 points on 24 shots, favor Notre Dame. If she scores 30 points on 17 shots, probably favor USC.
Mm-hmm.
So because UConn's more efficient more often than not. So just how efficient can USC be? And I want to see USC get Talia von Oelhoffen going a little more. Like you mentioned, the secondary scoring. I feel like she's someone who could potentially be an X factor.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like I'm kind of surprised that it feels like she hasn't gotten going yet because she was so good at Oregon State and she's experienced. But like we always say, like sometimes it just takes time with new pieces. But yeah, that's someone I would look at for them in terms of who can they get to step up. I'm also really interested to see what UConn does defensively with Juju because I don't know. I feel like they had no answer for Hidalgo and Miles, which is fine. But I mean, most teams don't. But I'm just curious to see like what they try to throw in this situation where you have like Hidalgo and Miles is very different because you have two that you like can't kind of
2 players,
yeah,
more than 1 player, yes,
right, exactly, and like now you've got one. So what do you do with that? I mean, obviously they have to try to guard other people from this team in the front court, but I'm interested.
Right, you're talking from a backcourt standpoint.
Yeah.
You imagine it's Paige, right?
Yeah, I imagine it's Paige because like. She's probably their best one-on-one defender, but I don't know. We'll see.
That's a good point because I assume I don't remember. I assume it was Nika Mule on Juju in the Elite Eight last year.
Yeah, it would have been Nika in any case, and like honestly, maybe even some I can't remember, but maybe some Aaliyah because like Aaliyah had that ability to with size, but to step out and guard the perimeter decently. But
last point for me. For Von Oelhoffen, actually, the numbers aren't as drastically different from last year as you would have guessed. The points per game are down from 10.5 to 7.5, and everything else is about the same. That surprised me. She's starting to pick it up, though, double figures in 4 or 5. So I think if she has a big game, that's good for USC, who is starting. They're starting a brutal travel stretch here. They're at UConn. They're home to Michigan and Nebraska. Then they go back cross country to Rutgers and Maryland. Like, that's just welcome to the new world if you're a West Coast team. A lot of travel. And it's something that they have to deal with, not necessarily today, because they'll have had a week off. I don't think they played in the midweek. So they'll have had a week off, and then they go back home, have the Christmas break, where the players probably are going to travel home, right, to their assorted places of residence.
Yeah.
So it's just something to watch against. Again, like you go into that Maryland game. Maybe they lose, not because they're less talented, because they're just worn out.
Yeah. The other thing for this USC team, like it is still a pretty young team, and I was just looking at their schedule. The only like true road game they've played so far this year is at Oregon, which given the state of the Oregon program, I'm guessing was not all that.
No, they were like 4 or 5
crazy.
grand.
Yeah.
In like a 12,000 seat arena. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's not going to be the environment in Hartford, like you said. It's sold out. It's an 8 p.m. game. Everyone's off for the holidays. Like it's going to be a rowdy crowd in the Excel Center on Saturday night. So that's going to be I think I don't know that it, like it's it just might shake up their freshmen a little bit.
Who needs the win more? UConn's 1-6 in their last 7 games against top 10 teams. The win is USC. USC has really only played 1. Like, Ole Miss is a pretty good team, so I'll give them that. Lost big at home to Notre Dame. Again, I've said the all year, like kind of getting LSU last year vibes. Who needs to win more?
I think UConn needs it more because USC is going to have more opportunities in the Big Ten. Like they're going to have UCLA, they're going to have Maryland, they're going to have plenty of opportunities to get some big wins in the Big Ten. UConn pretty much has this, South Carolina, and if you count Tennessee, that's all that's left.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so if they lose that, they're just going to have a lot of questions hanging over them heading into Tennessee and South Carolina. Is the South Carolina game, where is that this year? That's in Connecticut, right?
In Columbia.
Oh. Wasn't last year's game in Columbia? I don't know.
So maybe it's a new.
Maybe it's just a new deal. Regardless, sorry, it's in
deal,
Columbia. That's fair.
Mhm.
So that's your UConn-USC breakdown. Don't miss out tomorrow on a couple of sleeper games. Georgia Tech, Nebraska. That's a top 25 game. This might be as evenly matched a game as we'll see all weekend, aside from UConn-USC. Like if you look at the numbers, offensively, defensively, two seemingly evenly matched teams.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I keep forgetting that Nebraska's ranked, to be honest, but I'm interested to see for Georgia Tech. Like, we saw them kind of like beat up on UNC. Like, was that a fluke, or like can they hang around again with another team that's that caliber?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've proven it
Yeah.
more. Like, Nebraska hasn't played anyone, barring they went to Creighton and lost. And frankly, the Blue Jays, I think, were kind of desperate, as desperate as a team in November can be for a win. Like North Carolina, in Chapel Hill, Mississippi State, South Dakota State, Oregon, and Georgia.
That's fair.
They're all better wins than any Nebraska win, except for maybe the win over Minnesota. I don't know. The key for me is if Alexis Markowski and Natalie Potts, they're 6'3" and 6'2", if they can be the best players on the floor, one is a matchup problem for a smaller Georgia Tech team, let alone two of them being a problem. So they aren't classic bruisers. They do extend to the perimeter, but I feel like they could thrive down low. And if they do, I'll favor Nebraska.
Yeah, that's fair.
Georgia Tech also hasn't scored fewer than 70 since the second game of the season. So Nebraska will need to show up defensively. If Georgia Tech wins, I think they could be 17-0 when they head to South Bend a month from now.
That will put a lot of attention on that game.
Yes. And a lot of attention on a team that hasn't really seen a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I can't think of the last time Georgia Tech had this. They've been ranked in the last couple of years, but they've lived in.
Probably the last time they had that much attention was when they beat UConn a couple of years ago. Then right after, was it Paige got hurt? Someone got hurt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it was right after Paige got hurt or something.
I had absolutely no recollection of that game until you brought it up. Other game tomorrow, Colorado, West Virginia. I don't expect this to be that good of a game, but Colorado is a team that they were a 1 seed in the initial top 16 last year, and then the bottom fell out. They didn't host, and they went out in the second round?
Yeah.
I expect West Virginia.
Yeah.
Well, but Colorado is still there's a set of teams in the Big 12 right now that are all, I think, tournament caliber, but can you tell me the difference between Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, Utah, Iowa State, and Arizona? No. I just listed half of the league.
Yeah.
And if just flip a coin, if they play each other?
Yeah.
Did you have Colorado in your field?
I don't think so, unless I'm blanking. So I'm guessing they must have been low in the net if they're not. Or I'm just forgetting because it's been a minute too. But I feel like I didn't have
good podcasting. Let's both look things up.
Get there first. Yeah, they're 86 in the net. So no, I did not have them in the field because you're not getting in 86 in the net.
Bad net. They do have a good player, Frida Foreman. She just can't do it by herself. Colorado lost at Boise and lost to Louisville, where it's basically Frida Foreman by herself. Leora Garzone struggled in both those games. Can't hear. So I expect West Virginia to win. Just thought it was notable. Big 12, I think Kansas State and TCU are interchangeable, whether you have them first or second. I prefer Kansas State slightly. I don't think West Virginia is that far behind. No. And then it's like I just mentioned, everyone else. 3 pretty good teams and then a lot of bubble.
Yep.
While we're away, we don't have to talk about these, but we will. So we're taking next week off. We'll be back whatever that first Friday in January is. While we're away, UCLA will host Nebraska. USC will host Michigan. That both comes next Sunday. And then because you're on the West Coast in the new Big Ten, you'll flip. So UCLA will host Nebraska, Michigan. USC will host Michigan, Nebraska. Oklahoma, Texas, big SEC game on January 2nd. We're back on January 3rd. So that's what you're going to miss while we're gone. That Oklahoma, Texas game. Oklahoma swept the series last year. Kind of not against all odds, but those were certainly wasn't expected last year.
Right.
I think this on paper will be much more of a pick'em type game.
Yeah.
I don't know where that game is. All right. Doesn't matter. We'll talk about it because it's January 2nd. We're back on January 3rd. We'll
Yeah.
talk about it then. All right. The fun stuff to wrap things up. First of all, what's on your wish list? What's Santa Claus bring Megan Gauer for Christmas this year?
That's a great question. I honestly have no idea what I'm getting. The one thing I did get from my parents, such a 30-year-old gift, but smart thermostat, so I can control my heat from my phone. It's great.
We have one when we moved in. Yeah, we don't use it a ton, but it's nice where it's I'm cold. I don't have to get out of bed. I can just pop up the phone and that's it. I guess that's expensive.
Yeah.
No fun things.
I think my mom got me a new frying pan. This is what happens when you turn 30. It's practical. Everything's practical.
I don't put together a wish list in November, December, basically. So if I see something that I'm not going to buy myself, I send it to my wife. She'll buy it immediately, that day. She'll stick it in a box in our closet labeled gifts, or she'll tell my parents or whoever at the next gift giving opportunity. She pulls out the box, goes, that seems like enough for the gift giving, Valentine's Day, birthday, Christmas. So I don't know, probably get a couple books, probably something from Home Field. I don't know. The nice thing is I forget what I sent her.
So it's a surprise for you.
Right. It's this is cool. Oh yeah, I asked for that. Yeah. So yeah. We'll finish up. Top 3 Christmas songs.
I love a classic Mariah Carey. All I Want for Christmas Is You. Can't escape it.
It's impossible to escape.
Yeah. Top 3 though. I know you had this on the list, and I looked at it and I thought about it, and I never
I'll let
came
you
to a
think.
conclusion.
I will say, I feel like there's the very spectrumy feelings around that song. You either love it or you despise it. I'm in the middle. I don't hate it. I'm not a fan of it, but I don't know. Stockholm syndrome. I've given in. It is our Christmas overlord. It's fine. Congrats on the millions of dollars she makes every year for it was half an hour of work.
Yeah. I like a classic like Frosty the Snowman. Great movie, great song.
That is popular in the Joyce household, as
sure.
our son has discovered what it is.
And then I'm not a huge Christmas music person. I think it's because I worked in retail in college during the holiday season, and when you hear it the same 10 songs on repeat for 8 hours a day, it gets old real fast.
I worked in a grocery store out of college. Same thing, except, which surprised me because I'm in the South. They couldn't be religious Christmas songs, which it's Christmas, but whatever. So but that that cuts the playlist down by 2/3.
Yeah.
Say you're hearing the same. It might be different versions, but same 15 songs.
Yeah.
All right, my 3. Happy Holidays, Andy Williams. There's a reason that very few people cover it because you're not touching Andy Williams. White Christmas by the Drifters is the greatest Christmas song ever produced. And then my personal favorite, kind of a weird one, Bare Naked Ladies have a sneaky good Christmas album. They did God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen with Sarah McLachlan.
Huh.
Bops. It's Bops.
Nice.
What's your favorite Christmas movie?
I'm a big fan of The Grinch, obviously, clearly.
Which Grinch?
The Jim Carrey,
okay.
Live action Jim Carrey Grinch. I also love a classic claymation Rudolph though, every once in a while.
Oh, I didn't know if Rankin Bass counted. Rankin Bass though, that's I'm not a big movie guy to begin with. If I had to pick Elf, I guess I like Elf, but Rankin Bass though, You're That a Santa Claus, the go. Yeah. I'm big Miser Brother guy. I prefer Heat Miser. I relate to him more. Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Yeah.
Rudolph. We just bought these on DVD. We went to a Goodwill this week and bought a DVD player for $10. And we've shown the 3-year-old Rudolph and Frosty. Today he's getting the Miser Brothers.
I need to find the Miser Brothers. My boyfriend had never seen claymation Rudolph last year, and I was we must sit down and watch this.
I'm sorry that he had a terrible childhood. Well, so again, we'll take next week off. We hope you and yours have a safe and happy holiday season. Megan, Merry Christmas to you and your family. Or if you don't celebrate, happy holidays. And,
yes.
We'll talk in the new year. Come with a New Year's resolution.
Yeah, I'll work on that. And probably something around getting bracketology out every week, actually.
Ooh, when's the next one?
Sometime while I'm off the next 2 weeks.
It better be there when we come back in January 3rd.
It will.
Everyone, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. We'll talk to you again on January 3rd.